Hi, I'm Damien, this is Enneagram Life. Today I'm going to talk to you guys about Enneagram Type 7. So I'm going to talk about being trapped, feeling the fear of being trapped that the Enneagram Type 7 has, and the fear of being trapped. So the word fear is right there in that phrase because they're a fear type. So at their core, the core of the Enneagram Type 7 is fear, same as at the core of the Enneagram Type 5 and the Type 6. And everyone processes the fear differently. Like the 5 and 6 process fear differently. And one of the primary ways, one of the most significant ways that the Enneagram Type 7 processes the fear at its core is that it fears being trapped. Now, we're not talking about physically trapped. Maybe they fear that more than others, but no one really talks about that's not something that comes up in the modern world so often. We're talking about the fear of not having any options, the fear of being tied down, restriction. Yeah. So that they really fear and they feel restricted very easily. Is it that they definitely feel restricted, and that relates to fear, but yeah, they start to panic and fear that it's going to be so painful if they stay where they are, and often they have to stay there. Like, there is no choice in certain situations, and they feel really horrible if they are actually restricted. Like, for example, a high school student really can't leave the high school, and at that time they've pretty much developed as an adult, and there is that feeling of, and if you go to other cultures, like in Asia, for example, some university students, the way it's structured might actually be forced with guards and whatnot. Like, you can't leave the campus. So there is some real restrictions in the modern world like that, and they will feel very painful in those type of restrictions. But in the setting of most kind of Western countries, they feel that sort of restriction usually from things like courses, right? Or work environments where, say, a course of study where you have to complete so many units, that is a restriction. Like, you're not going to get the diploma or the degree or the pass mark, whatever it is that is the result of that course, unless you finish all of this particular series. And that's a restriction. And so that's how they commonly feel restricted in this. Things like that. Maybe it's just at work, the fact that they got to be there 8 hours a day in order to get a paycheck. There's really no choice around that without skipping the paycheck. And so that is the restriction. And I remember some incidents of this. Like, recently, I was renovating this house, and one of the carpenters there, I walked past him, and he just looks up at me, and he's like, he was a Type 7, and he was like, "I just hate being here, Damien. I can't stand it. I just can't stand being here. I just got to get out. I just can't stand it anymore. I just want to get out of here. I just want to go. I just want to leave." And I wasn't his boss or anything, and so it wasn't like he was appealing to me to actually leave. He was just expressing this enormous feeling of being trapped where he was. You could just see it. And I knew he was a type 7 before that. And seeing him express that to me, I was just thinking to myself, here it is, the type 7 feeling trapped. And you could see the pain he was in and the suffering of having to finish that job. And the enormous feeling of being trapped there. Another instance I remember was I was teaching English in China at a high school, and there was like some grade 11 students, and it was a sports day, and they all had to be there at the sports day, regardless of where they were playing sport, and they weren't playing sport, any of this group. And it was, I don't know, maybe like 10 students. And they saw me and they ran over and they were like, "Hey, how you going? What are you doing?" And I'm like, "I'm leaving. I'm going shopping." I got to buy something, I told him. And they couldn't leave. Like, they were physically, with actual guards on the gates, prevented from leaving. And they looked at me. They were all like, oh, like they all kind of wanted to leave. They were all stuck there. But one of them, who was the 7, I remember the look on her face. And she was like, "Oh, I want to go." Wow. She just looked like she was just so envious of how good it was that I got to leave, and she wanted to go where I was going, because I was going to this major shopping center. That's not a feeling that they have a lot. That kind of that envy that grass is always greener, and it's related to the idea of being trapped. If you look at someone else and what they're doing and you're like, the grass is greener on that side of the fence, you can see how that very much is related to feeling stuck in your position. When you look out and you see, and you're looking out at other people and what they have, and you're just like, wow, they're so lucky. I wish I could do that. You can see how that comes from a feeling of being trapped where you are. Yeah. And another instance, I remember there was this guy, and I was talking about how a friend of ours, like a mutual friend, had become a framer, and he was framing houses. And I was like, wow, it's so awesome that he's a framer now. It's so cool that he can erect. That's pretty much the whole house. He just comes in and he does all the framing. And he just recently finished his, and he's fully qualified. And I was talking about how great it was that he could do that and all the options he had. I wasn't trying to convince this guy to do that at all. I was just talking about this guy who I was genuinely impressed with what he could do, and that was about it. And he actually, the guy I was telling, not the framer, he actually went out and joined up a framing course, which was pretty surprising. But that's another thing, like a type 7 is quite easily led into trying new things. Yeah. And they really kind of buy, if someone else is talking about something like it's really awesome, they tend to buy into that quite easily. And so I was pretty surprised when this guy says, he actually went and joined this framing course. But I knew knowing he was a type 7, I knew there was pretty much no way this guy's going to finish it. And I was just like, this dude, he will not finish this course. That's not going to happen. And I don't know, a month later or something, I see him and I'm like, how's the framing course going? And he says, he quit it. He quit the course. And I knew this was going to happen. And I was like, how come? Why? And he tells me about how at the TAFE, that's a technical college, so we call that in Australia a technical college. At the TAFE, he was in the classroom beside him, there was a mechanics course, and he would always look out the window and see what they were doing and be like, wow, that looks so cool. They're pulling apart an engine, and he wanted to do that, and he felt like, wow, that would be awesome. I wish I was doing that. And so he ended up quitting his framing course before he finished it, before he got any of the qualifications, and joined up in the mechanics course. And I knew he was going to quit the mechanics course, and he did. So, but it was just that moment, like when he told me about why he quit the course and how he talked about looking into the window and seeing how awesome it looked, and that's why he quit. And I was just like, I could just see in him like that feeling of being trapped when he was describing how it was in his framing course, which he had initially, like 2 months earlier, thought was going to be totally amazing. And now the idea of going back to doing another day of that was just total pain and suffering to him. And you could just see it in his eye, the pain and the suffering of how much he felt. And that's like that high school student, the pain and the suffering when she was trapped there. And that carpenter who had to stay there at work. And when he was talking to me about how he just couldn't stand it and just wanted to get out, I could just see the pain and the suffering in their eye. And just that, there's this feeling of missing out on whatever they're not doing. The grass is always greener. And it's all associated with that, being a fear of being trapped and that feeling of being trapped. Yeah. And this is why they're so often like running around doing something else, like not staying at home, getting out there and going somewhere, but actually going nowhere. Like so often, they're getting out of the house and they're always out there and always busy, but they're achieving so little. They're always out there doing something, but they never achieve anything. It's that kind of thing. And this is an average type 7, so plenty of 7s out there who are kicking ass, slaying. Don't feel like I'm knocking you if you're a 7 in particular. But yeah, these are certainly general observations. So if you like this, please comment, subscribe, press the like button.